Okay. So, thanks, Wes, for being willing to do this with me.
You're welcome.
Today is 7th day of September, I think. 2024.
Yes.
You're sure that's the year?
That's about all I'm sure
It's
of.
Saturday. It's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
It's probably about, 9:30 in the morning by this time?
It is 9:53.
Yeah, so I'm really, really grateful to get the opportunity to play in this manner with you. So we just spent about an hour warming up, looking at a few things, and the express intent here was to try to answer a question in service to the cohort that's going through Rafe Kelly's Evolve, Move, Play apprenticeship program right now. So this year's class, and you came up in the dialogue a couple weeks ago. So maybe I start there and help frame. How do you understand what the apprenticeship program is?
The apprenticeship program, I think people who go through one of the long forms of Rafe Kelly's Evolve, Move, Play, the people who are interested in it, interested in taking it to the next level to pass it on to other people formally, can sign up for an apprenticeship program. I'm not sure if it's not for everybody. I mean, do they say, I don't think this is going to work for you, or this is going to work for you? If that's the case, or if you want it, you can sign up for it. But yeah, it's basically trying to spread Evolve, Move, Play through different people and different venues, with probably a different tilt on the formal Rafe Kelly one, right?
Well, I don't.
It would be the cam tilt.
Yeah, I'd be careful with that. I'm pretty tilted.
Not in a bad way.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's pretty accurate. It's basically a 48-week program. The format is, roughly speaking, there's 2 lecture and dialogue sessions. So it's kind of like I think of it as essentially akin to a master's program, where you got a relatively small cohort of people who already have developed a fair amount of experience with whatever the material is, and come together to really try to take it to that next level. And it's interesting that you talk about the spreading of it. The word association that occurs with me is, when you say spreading it, it's like, spreading manure? It's like, what exactly, are you some kind of...
disseminating it.
Yeah, it's the whole viral metaphor thing. It's like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? What are we spreading?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Anyway, that was just, I'm in a boisterous mood this morning, and that was kind of a funny association that occurred to me anyway. I think it's funny. Okay, so you came up as a person, so as an actual example, as an embodied demonstration of what we were conceptually trying to get ourselves as a cohort around, come to some deeper understanding, some mastery of, you could say. This principle of conversion, in a commercial sense anyway, where you say, hey, you've run restaurants. We ran the example a moment ago, where walking down the street, if you're a what do you call that? Restaurateur?
Yeah, I'm the restaurateur. Whoever's walking down the street is a potential customer.
Yeah. So typically you'll see a menu in the window. Mm-hmm. Some people are going to look at the menu and they're just going to keep on walking. Other people are going to look at the menu. They might come in, say hi, look around, see what it smells like, see if they can get a better sense, and they're going to turn around, walk down the street, and then other people are going to come in and sit down and have a meal, buy some alcoholic beverages where you really get the margin. That's how, I'm not a restaurateur, but I've heard it, I don't know, but I've been told that the way restaurants really make money is by selling alcohol. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, anything you can upsell is over and above, right?
Well, specifically though, I thought the margin on
It
alcoholic
used to be,
beverages.
absolutely used to be, but when they clamped down on drinking and driving, that
Yeah.
changed. So
Oh,
the
interesting.
margin had to change more towards the food and less towards the alcohol, because people wouldn't come in and just get shit-faced like they used to in a restaurant. They would, they might have one drink just to, as a social lubricant,
Yeah.
and that's about it. And then drinking and driving now is like a terrifying possible. I mean, that could change your life now, whereas before that wasn't the case.
Change it in a more profound, well, that's a weird thing to say though, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole
Okay.
too deep, but I stand corrected. So I learned something from you just now, that I had the misconception that restaurants made better margins on selling alcoholic beverages, and you're saying that at a point in time that was probably true, definitely true, but presently not so much.
And it also depends on the restaurant. If you're a high-end restaurant, absolutely, because people will make a plan in order so that they can order a fancy bottle of wine, and often they live close or they're in a hotel nearby, which is a different kind of customer, right? It's planned.
Okay. Yeah, so you're the way that I hear that in general business terms is that you are segmenting the market.
It's very segmented, yeah. So it depends on what level you're at as a restaurant. I mean, you go all the way from franchise fast food all the way to Tojo's in New York, right? Which is, you're going to drop $500 per person in that restaurant, whereas McDonald's, you're going to drop $15 per person.
Yeah.
One sells alcohol, one doesn't, and then there's everything in between. So
Yeah.
that's something you have to think about.
Okay, so that makes me think about what you were saying about when you were trying to articulate, when I asked you to articulate what is the EMP apprenticeship program, and you started to describe, and the degree of confidence with which you were speaking, I noticed declined when you got to the point where you said, can anybody? Can you just sign up?
Yeah.
Are you automatically in, or is there what would you call that?
A selection process?
Yeah. So is there a selection process? And my sense is, well, I know this to be true for me, and we have talked about this as a cohort. And I'll just drop a name here and say that Chandler Stevens, who's the guy who's taken us through the business development part of this program, he calls it what does he call it? He calls it a paid diagnostic. So one of your market offerings is, hey, Wes, if you're interested in this, you and I the first thing we're going to do is sit down, and you're going to pay me, and we're going to discern through basically a process very similar to what you and I are doing right now, in which we're going to come to an agreement as to whether or not this is a good fit. And it doesn't have to be paid. There's that at that point of intake, there's that process of presentation of, this is what I'm offering, this is what you're wanting, to what extent do those things line up, and then we agree whether or not. So the value proposition for me as the apprentice is Rafe has done years or even decades worth of work at this point to basically provide the consumable content in a way that it affords me the opportunity to provide. It's so differentiated. It's like fine, so yeah, I'll just say differentiated. The content, the lesson plans, the things that I can just take off of the shelf and start to flow with you, like curriculum-wise, allows me to draw on all of that organizational work and provide a highly tailored offering, service, product or service, and or it's probably both, product and service, to you at the price point that's appropriate for both you and I at that particular point in time. So that's from the apprenticeship side. So then on the consumer side, why did I go into all of that? What we wanted to get to here is that you are a demonstration, you and Marilise are demonstrations of people who converted. So going back to the analog of the hungry person walking down the street looking for a restaurant to go get a meal in, you guys converted. And the question is, why?
Yeah. So I have to think about that a little bit. But so first of all, let's categorize where Evolve Move Play is, right? I would consider that a high-end restaurant if we're using restaurant analogies.
Yeah.
So the way a high-end restaurant works is, they take reservations as opposed to walk-bys.
Yep.
So, and how do I know that a particular restaurant is worth planning to think about making a reservation for? Is I've heard of you.
Yeah.
Right? I've heard of you. And then backed up by, and then this was wonderful in my case, backed up by someone who has gone there and experienced that particular restaurant.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm stepping down the commitment road, right? And for something, so restaurants are easy for me, right? If I hear that a restaurant's good from a reliable source, I'll go and eat there. Now, this was a little different for me because it's not clearly spelled out what actually goes on at these retreats.
Yeah.
You look online, for me it was terrifying. I looked and there was a bunch of guys doing some difficult vaults.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I'm interested in this. I'm 58 years old.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think I'm interested in that. And it was in discussion with you and Marilise and Marilise is older than me, and she said, I did it. You can easily do this, and it's not all about that, right?
Yeah.
So it was, I had to walk through some fear in order to do something. And this is different, not just for me, but I think probably. Did you have a pretty good idea what to expect the first time you attended, or were you just like, I'm all over this, I know what it's about? Or was it a leap of faith for you? Because for me, it was a leap of faith.
Well, you and I, oh boy, there's so many things there. I want to put a pin in the faith comment, and I'll simply say that my day-to-day experience of everything, whether it's Evolve, Move, Play, or anything else, involves a very heavy element of faith. So everything in some very real sense for me is a leap of faith.
I don't disagree at all.
Okay. So then give me a moment to gather my thoughts here. So I want to focus, I want to come back to the original intent here, which is to serve that cohort.
Right.
And to try to help articulate what it is that I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to say drives the conversion process as such. So in the most generic terms, we can say the decision is made or the leap of faith is taken. And then particularize from there. So you were asking me, what was my personal experience with Evolve, Move, Play? And mine was very much by the time that I got to actually starting down the path of showing up at one of those events, I had already taken the leap. So I had a pretty good sense, I think. I think I had a very high sense, strong sense. And I'll say that by simply relating the experience that I had in the interview. So at that point in time, I don't think he does it anymore, but when I got involved, Rafe himself was actually doing the screenings. He was doing he was doing the interview that was doing that intake process where he's saying, are you gonna fit? Are you gonna work out in this or not? Is this actually gonna be of service to you? And the difference, there's a key distinction to be made here, is if you're, one business model is to not be concerned about you at all and just simply focus on, I'm going to convert as many as I can. And that is not the EMP model, because the EMP model is very much about quality as far as I can tell. It's like, it's
high end, right?
Yeah, it's that testimonial that you just talked about is expressly acknowledged. Like it's an explicit part of the overall strategy. It's like, we don't want people in here for whom this is not going to serve, because the consequence of that to our reputation is it's very costly. So don't do it. Just really invest up front in making sure that this is going to be a fit. So in that interview with Rafe, between me and Rafe, was I said, my sense is that I've been doing what you've been doing, except I've been doing it with prosthetics. So I was the parkour is a very unmediated movement practice, as in you don't even need anything to do it other than a place to move your body. You can be naked running through the woods and doing, like, it works. Compared to, I was born into a life where I had access to horses and motorcycles, and it's like high. So on the topic of flow, those artifacts, those prosthetics, those technologies are like a drug, in the sense that they're an accelerant into that process of flow. They make it more powerful. It's like you get on a 2-stroke motorcycle as a kid after riding a BMX bike as a kid, and it's like, this is so good. And you have that experience of that universal experience of flow, and that just, once that process kicks off, it's like you're hooked, like literally hooked. Like your whole neurophysiological creature is like, I want more of that. Yeah. So with as I understood Rafe and what he was doing, at least on the movement side of things, was fundamentally the same experience, except for the prosthetic, except for the technological mediation.
Right.
Boy, I'm talking a lot, and I really want to listen to you, and I want to draw out the wisdom that you have to offer here. So is there anything else to say on that? You had said it was a conversation with Marilise. So then let's talk about Marilise. I don't think she would mind if we talked about her. Yeah. So you said you were 58 years old. She said she's older than you. I don't know how old she is.
I think she's 65.
Okay. And she was like, I did this.
Yeah.
Stop being a wuss, Wes. Go.
She pushed. She was like,
she did?
Yeah, she pushed. She's like, you have to, and she can, because she doesn't have any skin in the game, so she's not pushing me because she's going to get a commission. She's pushing me as a friend. And she's like, just do it. Just smash that button and do it. And that was what pushed me over the edge. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's experience this.
It's always a woman.
It could have just as easily been you. You have that. You would have that capacity to push me as well too. It could have been you.
And yet.
But she had such an amazing experience that she wanted me to have that amazing experience as well too.
Okay.
I think you're much more refined in your communication, and Marilise is very. Marilise. She's French, right? She's. She says what's on her mind.
Yeah, you better be ready.
Yeah. Yes.
Or not. She doesn't care. Once she gets on a roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a force. That's for sure.
So ready to not take it personally, for sure.
Yeah.
I love Marilise. So, I think is it okay if I pull you back a little bit?
Yeah, that would probably be helpful.
Okay, so I think you have to begin with, and I don't know, maybe you've already done this, is define your objectives. Like clearly and simply define your objectives with this in mind, right?
Yep.
So define your objectives and then work forward from there. So in defining, and then once you've defined your objectives, then you bring that third entity into the equation. You do it as you're defining your objectives too. Is who and what am I looking for to experience this restaurant? Let's stick with the restaurant analogy. Like, what's my cohort of individuals who might want? I mean, there's people who are risk averse, and there's no way you're gonna convince them, right? You're not gonna convince someone who's risk averse to experience this, because it feels to me like there's an element of personal risk, and I think that's all part of flow, right?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, it's part of flow. So you have to have someone who has an appetite for this, and maybe even already tasted it. Yeah. In our case, we've definitely have an appetite for it, and we've tasted it many times. And so I think that's your target market.
So let's put a point on that. When you say it, what is it?
It is the experience.
The experience of flow?
The experience of, I don't know if it's so much as it's an experience of flow. I mean, that's an outcome. An experience of trying something completely different. And in the case of repeat customers, trying it again. I think the experience is probably different every time. That would be my thinking. Signing up again would be, it's going to be the same but different, because it seems like the participants make a big difference to the experience.
Definitely.
It's the connections you make while going through that. Now, I already know that, and I was excited about this, was meeting new people with new experiences, and I got that in spades, right? I love that. Was connecting with the people and hearing their stories and their experiences and what they were experiencing, because as you know, it got raw. It gets raw with everybody, right? It gets to the point where you're comfortable enough to completely open up to the experience and to each other in a way that you just can't get anywhere else, because you're in the woods in many cases, you're pushing yourself to the limits, you're doing things that you wouldn't necessarily choose to do because of your risk aversion. And so that's, and I don't, that's a difficult thing to communicate. So the intimate level of communication that we have, that Mary-Lise and I have, like Rafe was already in my radar on the search engine as a result of John Vervaeke. Right?
Yeah.
So the fact that he's out there is wonderful. Already there's, he conveys a level of trust, and then you get the people who are willing to put their reputation on the line in order to promote him. I doubt they're getting anything in return as a result of that promotion. This is experiences they've had, and all that helps, right? And all that is building from what I can see. So you have to, I think it's a situation now where your potential customers come to you, and then it's a matter of closing.
Yeah.
And the fact that you two, we've got a long relationship with you more than Mary-Lise, but we have a long-standing relationship, and you did this. I mean, that just made it. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, I think.
I did what?
You did EMP.
Oh, I went and participated.
You went and participated in it.
Yeah.
And you might not know this, but I watch you.
Yeah, it's so funny. You and I, we did not, I don't think, coordinate blue shirts today, but it's freaking hilarious. It's like, we talked about this in the last one of these we recorded, where there's our genetic and cultural heritage, it's basically the same.
Yeah.
And there's a big part of that is hunting, I think. So you've spent much of your life hunting fish.
Yeah.
You know, in a commercial way. So you've played it out in that way. I have played it out in different ways. But when you say you watch me, yeah, it's like I look at you, you've got predator eyes. It's that super binocular focused, like clear blue-eyed, is vicious. So why is that important in the context of what it is that we're doing right now? I think it has to do with it really has to do with that interview, I think. The selection. You said selection process early on, and it has to be a mutual selection. There has to be, I think the right way to say this in the parlance that I'm offered here through EMP, is assent and consent. So the close, you made a beautiful point there where you said, hey, it's probably more a consequence, it's probably more in the EMP frame at this stage of the game, it's probably more of the program of attraction.
Yes, absolutely.
And then to be very careful with the selection process that necessarily is attendant upon that process of attraction. Because what invariably happens is that this has been my experience anyway, is that for a long time it looks like not much is happening. But then you go over that. People say things like you reach a point of critical mass, you reach in a solar system, it's like you probably get cloud of dust, and then you get accretion to rudimentary planetary objects, and then on a time scale, all of a sudden, you have this phenomena where you realize the Pareto principle, or that what's that called? You know what I'm talking about. It's the when you look at a population, there's almost nothing going on.
It's like
there's
a critical
almost nothing.
mass.
And then all of the constituents are occur in one part of the distribution. But to which is what you want as if you're after high-end customers in a commercial space, that's what I want anyway. It's like once that occurs, it's like you only focus on, well, I shouldn't say that. The value of the reputation at that point in time is so high that the focus of the business is on that interview. It's on that sorting process, and it has to be one that is one of, I'll say, the deepest mutual respect. Man, I'm on a tear.
When I had done the interview, I'd made up my mind. That was just a formality.
Okay.
I think the relationship building prior to the interview is the key part, and that was taking place, in my own head, and was being reinforced by what I was watching online. Right. Once it was a possibility, then I'm sort of doing my own research. And the thing is, first of all, Rafe Kelly kept popping up. Popping up in my consciousness through, I didn't even know what Rafe Kelly looked like, but Peterson mentioned him, Vervaeke mentioned him, talked about him in a big way with Vervaeke in his Lex Peterson interview, or Lex Friedman, yeah. And then they both knew, I think they'd both been to Evolve Move Play, so they discussed it for a bit. That really got me thinking, right? This was before you and Marilise had even gone.
So I don't think I understood that.
Yeah, it was in my search engine before you guys had gone, and then you guys both went. And I don't know if I ever would have went had you guys not gone at that point, right? It was just there. It was a suggestion. I mean, we're inundated with all kinds of suggestions day in and day out. Right?
That's for sure.
And I mean, you point that out as well too. If I'm in your vicinity, I'm manipulating you. So the world, 1,000 different things are trying to manipulate us, and some subtly. You're a subtle manipulator. You're very effective.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, feel good about it, because you're not doing it maliciously. You're doing it.
I hope.
You're doing it in a way that it's subtle, and you can take it or leave it, right? It's not like you're not a used car salesman, and that's not what we're looking for in this experience too. We're not looking for closers that are car salesmen who are willing to manipulate in a way that's dishonest. This is quality stuff. This is honest. This is people looking for an experience, seekers, and so it's just a matter of over time, and I think this is an over time thing, right? To get the suggestion out there over time in a subtle way that gets people thinking, and then building a relationship somehow. And it's hard to identify who's thinking about you. So to get someone to go from just thinking about it to pulling the trigger, that's what you're looking for, right? Because there's probably 10,000 people out there right now thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I think there's probably more than that. Well, thank you for the kind words. Before I take another tangent here, is there anything else you want to say about the ground that we've covered so far?
No, go ahead.
So this feels like I'm trying to shift pretty dramatically the level of resolution, and it might fall completely flat. So if it does, please help me just bring it back to something more real. But when you say that people want an experience,
and it's not the experience like I love sports fishing, so I'm going to hire a guide and go sports fishing. I mean, that's an experience that I already pretty much know, but it's going to be different every time, but I know what that experience is. This was a step into the unknown, so it's much more in the way of a relationship and trust is required in order to, I mean, that was for me, right? Some people are just like, yeah, let's do it, for sure. I think there's one or two people there who were just like so open to experience. They're like, oh, this looks cool, slam. But that's not me. I needed a little coaxing. And so you guys were walking, breathing, who I know, new testimonials.
yeah,
And I saw a grin, I saw growth, I saw it all. I look for that kind of stuff. And so I was lucky in that sense. I was moving in that direction, but there was two living, breathing testimonials that I could reach out and touch, right? So that was super helpful. And then the experience, man, it was a wonderful experience. So here I am a convert, I'm a living, breathing testimonial to, and they said this at the beginning, how people are gonna ask you, what you experienced, like what was it like, and you're gonna go, right? It's freaking hard. So basically, the fact that you guys came out with a little grin, happy, and I could see some personal growth as a result too, that's the message I needed.
Oh, that's interesting. So the personal growth, you said you saw that.
I saw that.
Can you say anything more about that?
So to see personal growth in an individual, in my experience, is to see a sense of ease and calm that they didn't have prior. So that's the little grin, right? I mean, if you've got a little grin on your face, you're a gateway to conversation, right?
Yeah.
So that is, and what is that little grin? I mean, I don't know. Is it a little more humility? Is it a little more, you're more comfortable in your skin and you're embodying that. So as a person grows, they become more comfortable in their environment, in their skin. And if you can embody that, people will say, what's going on? Or watch you,
It's inherently attractive.
Yeah, it's inherently attractive, and absolutely, right? I mean, thinking of who you used to be and who you are now, you're a completely different animal from when I first met you, and I commented to you.
Except for the blue eyes and blue shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
So all I have is blue eyes and blue shirts. That's always has been, always will be.
Yes.
I'm teasing.
We talk about flow, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens as a result of personal growth is the conversation flows much more easily. We're better listeners and we're better communicators. So I think that comes across, and we've both really seen that in Marilise, right?
For sure.
We see I never heard her laugh for a while, right? And then all of a sudden she's laughing. And we're going, wow. Right?
So the mirth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people don't know what it is that they're seeking, which to some extent is all of the time.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah.
The role of the coach, which is ostensibly what I'm training to become in this EMP paradigm, is to not know in particular what it is that you're seeking, but to at least know directionally. And that requires faith.
Yes.
So there was somewhere I wanted to go with that.
So a principled, embodied individual, I think, is huge. So this isn't a profit motivation from what I can understand, which is a big deal, right? And that's what happens with businesses sometimes. They start with principles, and then they get to a point where it's a profit motivation and they lose something. They continue on, but they've lost that magic. So it's important. So what I get out of this particular experience is it's not a profit motive. It's trying to allow people to have a growth experience, a transcendent experience is the motivation. It's just like, hey, you got to check this out. This is awesome. And that's the focus. And then the profit flows in as a result. But the profit isn't primary.
Yeah.
It's the experience, and it's a principle-centered experience, and it's principle-centered individuals who are, at this point, who are looking for a way to disseminate this experience. Is that accurate?
For me, it is more a reinforcement of the attention on what is occurring in the experience. So it's more, so this helps me come back to the crux of the issue for me. So when I don't know what it is that the person before me is actually seeking, which I'm also simultaneously confessing that I never really know, I can only offer directional guidance. I'm deliberately speaking as generically as I can. So let me just see if I can switch to a metaphor. I heard a metaphor. It was in an interview that I heard Vervaeke conducting with a couple of, I forget what their exact titles were, but basically, you know Vervaeke, some of the folks that he speaks with. And one of the people he was speaking with, as I understood it, has spent her career serving adolescents. And she was making the point that, hey, you can think of adolescence as one of two. She says there's two, from her perspective, if I heard what she was saying correctly, there's two experiences as a human that are significantly more profound than any of the other experiences. One of them is death. No, three. So there's birth, there's death, and there's adolescence. As she says, adolescence is like, she used the metaphor of the caterpillar to butterfly through the chrysalis. And she says, you know, you can see there's this thing, there's this formed body, there's this caterpillar, and then there's this chrysalis, and then you see this formed thing, this butterfly. If you go look at that chrysalis and you open it up, it's goo in between those two things. And that she was using that as an analog or metaphor for adolescence.
Yeah.
And that is the reason that I'm saying that right now, is to just make a really grotesque point about that same basic phenomenon is eternally playing out within each and every one of us. So we're always transforming into something else that never stops.
Yeah.
And I'll say it's instinctual seeking of an experience that is different is fundamentally in service to that process, which is gooey. It's messy to some extent, depending on the particulars of that person's circumstance, where they are, what it is that they're doing. There's eternally a need to stop being some part of myself and start becoming a new part of myself that I've never been before. And the guide, the purpose of the guide or the coach is to, among other things, be a presence, be the chrysalis in which that gooey mess can find its natural full expression, its natural inherent realization of whatever it was intended for. Hello, caterpillar.
Yeah.
You're a worm. Actually, you're intended to fly. Yeah.
It's a wonderful analogy, and what you're describing is a biological experience that we have no choice in as we go through adolescence. And so now we have to be intentional. A lot of people go through adolescence and just let everything happen to them. And so I look at you, and I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I know you're heading in the right direction. And so I don't often know what I want, so I have to follow someone who's heading in the right direction. And when it comes to this experience, or as we get older, I mean, we go from a fluid intelligence. As a young person, I can think super creatively, and I can think outside the box and all that. And that changes as I get older. My intelligence becomes more crystallized. So I need to be super intentional the more older and set in my ways I get. But the more I make this maneuver, the better I can, the more success I will have at making it again. So I have to keep at it. To have that transcendent experience can happen at any point in your life, and hence the word reborn or born again, right? Which has bad connotation. Nothing worse than a born again, right? Like, there's bad born agains, right? Like a born again non-smoker, or born again Christians are the worst sometimes, right? I mean, a good Christian is awesome, but one who's trying to shove it down your throat is and that can be really off-putting. So we want to be born again, but we don't want to be evangelical about it. We want to embody it.
I don't mind them when they come at me. I play.
Oh yeah.
It's bring it on.
Yeah. Oh, I've done that too. I mean, I've invited Jehovah's Witnesses into my house and had some fun.
Easy now. We don't need to. We better be careful.
Yeah. Fair enough.
What I wanted to. Oh, I don't want to interrupt you again. You're saying several things, and I'm going to try to. Yeah, I got an idea as to how to close, but I want you to run your course because I love listening to you. And then I'll say a few things, and then you get the last word.
All right. So the track I was taking was Yes. So once the everybody who I tend to hang around with now, that I surround myself with, is someone who has had a taste for a transcendent experience, because they've experienced it, and once you've got a taste for it, I mean, and these are usually people who have gone past that sort of fluid intelligent phase of their life into a crystallized intelligence phase of their life. So it's usually happened as a result of something traumatic. And they've had two choices. One is to go that way, which is not a good direction, like it's heading off a cliff. And the other direction is to go this way, which is, it's uphill, but it's going to a place where you can see, where you've got a better view, where you can sort of, you can scan the horizon and figure out what's going on and make a change in your life. And so people who have actually made that decision to go that way are the people who end up with a taste for it, right? A taste for a new experience, a new transcendent experience, whether that be massive or just little ones along the way.
Yeah.
I hunger for it now. I try and seek it out. And so I knew that was something that I was going to get out of EMP.
Yeah.
But does this fit me in my life situation? I mentioned before I was concerned about my age.
Yep.
And the parkour aspect of it. But there's just so much more to it than parkour. Parkour is just, one aspect of it. It's something I think Rafe focuses on because that's Rafe's area of expertise. But all the other things were so important as well too. And they all conspired to bring everyone together, to put them to make the connections, because it all comes back down to relationships and connections, to make the relationships and connections that we had during this experience super intimate, in a way that I can't think of another venue where you could have these super intimate connections that's deliberate like that. I mean, sure, you could have them if you're in a group of hikers and you get lost in the woods for 3 or 4 days. You could have that. Like literally.
That's
search
an interesting
parties.
equivalency.
Yeah, but this is like kind of taking you off the grid, and stepping you through a process that makes you vulnerable, opens up, which is super important to have these experiences. You have to open yourself up in a way that allows you to become vulnerable, because nothing new is going to flow in unless you take that risk of opening yourself up to become. And the participants and the guides, the coaches, super good at making that maneuver. You had Rafe, you had Kyle, you had a bunch of people there who would set the stage and get you going, and then it would take on a life of its own. So, yeah. I don't know if I stayed on topic there or not, but go ahead.
You did. Was Aaron Cantor?
Yes, Aaron was there. And
Okay.
Aaron was there. So that was, sorry, I just couldn't remember his name. So he was another component that made it all. And quite honestly, for me, the parkour was not the most important component for me. You know? It was more Aaron and Kyle. Rafe was wonderful in he's very articulate, and he's got great verbal fluency, and he could capture your attention when he spoke, and that was wonderful too. He would draw you in and point you in a direction, or cause you to think.
Yeah. The mild perturbance of thought. So, what are you?
One more thing I want to add to that is that, you lower your defenses. You know, people can come at you in the way that you raises your defenses.
For sure.
And so this goes about things in a way that lowers your defenses. And the only way you're going to lower your defenses is if you trust. Trust and faith, I think, are synonymous. So yeah. Once you're in that mode of I trust these people, I think they have my best intentions in consideration here, and then anything can happen. I love that.
Yeah.
And so back to the interview process, I'd pretty much made up my mind at that point that I was going to do this, but I think the interview process could have changed my mind as well too.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that interview process convey that sense of trust.
Yeah, it's a high stakes circumstance.
Yeah.
So a while ago you said I seemed more comfortable in my skin. And you also talked about a transition in intelligence from fluid to crystalline. Which is this might be wrong, but when I hear that, I hear phase transition. Like, yeah, you go from fluid to solid.
Yep.
And there isn't an in-between. And the bit on the parkour, so that's a fancy word by my way of thinking for just skillfully moving the body in any circumstance. And Rafe, I have heard refer to it, I believe I heard him say this, as an epistemology. So the movement of the body itself is an epistemology. So parkour is an epistemology.
Can you define epistemology?
How it's the study of how I know anything. So it's knowing knowledge itself.
Oh, knowing by doing.
And one other thing that he said to me had to do with recovery of the body. He says, just kind of in passing, something where there's some part of what it is that I'm up to is recovery of the body, which is true, while also paying proper attention and respect to that transformation of intelligence that I am body. So that's a real thing, to go from fluid to crystalline in terms of embodied intelligence. And it's necessary the same way that it's necessary to cast a relatively hard case around that chrysalis, the chrysalis is the hard case. So the other embodied experience that I've had in my life that is just barking at me right now is that of pouring cement foundations. So if you encounter cement subsequent to that very brief phase, you wouldn't think that it had ever been a gooey, mostly fluid thing.
Yes.
You know, like you run into anything cement, it's like it wasn't ever fluid, although it was. So the point that I want to make and that I want to close on in this dialogue anyway is the body is mostly water. If we believe that intelligence is embodied at least to some extent, which I do, then the capacity to liquefy that which is providing the mediation of intelligence itself is actually far beyond, probably, what most people know it to be. Because the body is mostly fluid all of the time, necessarily. So, and the way to re-liquefy or to gain the ability to, I'll say, enrich or further embellish or make more beautiful the embodied intelligence. So when we say it's crystalline form, one very important fundamental way to do that is through movement of the body, and doing it in a very careful manner, which is what the curriculum that I am exposed to and learning to play in provides, I believe. So should you care to take it, can have the last word.
So I may not have realized what the movement was doing for me. I may have just taken it for granted. The way you described it was, I probably was, not realizing just how important it was. Because I mean, it was, yes. So it's like a diversified portfolio of things going on here, right? And we don't know how they all come together to make a cake, so to speak. At the end of it, you make a cake, but I mean, one small ingredient in the making of a cake is either is either yeast or baking soda, right? Very small part of it, but yet it makes it rise. So sometimes we don't realize that the small ingredient, how important the small ingredient is. So there was an analogy that to describe the fact that I may have been unaware as to how all the ingredients in Evolve, Move, Play came together to facilitate this experience.
Yeah.
And I think they're all important.
Yeah.
Sound good?
That sounds great. I'm super grateful that you're willing to do this with me.
I love having conversations with you, Cal.